Hi, this is Pastor Josh, and welcome back to another lesson on our financial stewardship series. And today we're going to be looking at lesson 6, and that is strategic spending. And what I want to do is really help you rethink how to spend in a way that's going to be beneficial to you. And last time we looked at creating budgets and having a budget and really refining your budget to make sure that you could live within your means. You could spend less than you make, and you can work towards long-term savings. And so today, as we look at strategic spending, it's really going to help you to be able to live within your budget. And hopefully this will give you just some tips and tricks on how to spend less, how to really get the most out of your money. This is kind of thinking outside the box and really helping you to think in ways that maybe you haven't thought before, but ways that are going to be beneficial to you. And so that's what we're going to do. You know, we want to really think about the right kind of spending. When we think about strategic spending, you want to be thoughtful and you want to be wise about how you spend and make sure that your spending is really going to be a benefit to you. And I just want to give you a reminder of a couple of biblical passages that are going to just really help you to understand this. And the first one is Proverbs 21, verse 7. It says, "He who loves pleasure will become a poor man, and he who loves wine and oil will not become rich." So Proverbs 21:17, it gives us a warning saying, don't love pleasure and don't love luxury, because if you do, it's going to lead you into poverty. It's going to eat into your resources, and so you're not going to be able to build wealth. And that's a really great reminder and a really great warning that you want to avoid items that are going to really eat away at your budget. Let me give you another passage. This is out of Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10. This is the wisdom of Solomon. And he says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity." And so if you love money, you're not going to be satisfied with money. You know, the secret ingredient to life isn't money, and it's not things. The secret ingredient to life is the Lord. And that's why Solomon tells us at the end of Ecclesiastes that when all is said and done, the end is to fear God and keep his commandments. And if you do that, and as you implement wisdom in your life and how you live, then you're going to have blessing and you're going to have joy that is part of having a right priority and a right attitude towards God and to possessions. Let me give you a third one. This is Proverbs 19, verse 10. And it says, "Luxury is not fitting for a fool, much less for a slave to rule over princes." And this is the opposite wisdom that we see in our society. You know, we live in America and we have a lot of prosperity and we're very wealthy. We enjoy the benefits of so much luxury around us. But what Solomon says is that luxury isn't fitting for a fool. And what's happening in our society is just the opposite of that, is that people, they love luxury. They want luxury at whatever the cost. And they want luxury even if they can't afford it. And so they prioritize luxury and wants and their desires, but it brings them into ruin. And so they suffer and they have luxury, but at what cost? And so these are some warnings that I want to just remind you of. And as we think about spending and being a good steward of finances, I want you to really think about spending money in a way that's going to be strategic, in a way that's going to be a benefit and a blessing for you and for your family for generations to come. So as we look at this today, I want to give you a couple of key points when we think about strategic spending. I want you to think about spending in a way that is going to have a financial benefit. When you think of spending money, I think most people, they think about, well, I spend it and it's gone. But I want you to think about money that I spend it, but I still retain value from that. Now, some items are not going to retain any value. You buy food and you You buy it, you spend it, and then you eat it, and then it's gone, right? There's no lasting value for that. But for other things, you can make purchases in a way that you retain that value, and where that value doesn't just vanish. So let's take a look at the first one. If you're taking notes here, I want you to think about just one key aspect of strategic spending, and that is this: prioritize necessities. You need to prioritize needs, and you need to become good at distinguishing between needs and wants. So many times we make purchases and we purchase things that we want rather than things that we need. And by purchasing those wants, we really just eat into our budget and make things tougher on ourselves. So it's critical to prioritize needs when making purchases. And you need to exercise wisdom in making these purchases. And so I'm going to give you 4 questions to ask. As you think through and say, how do I make purchases and how do I prioritize needs over wants? These 4 questions are really going to help you. And the first question is this: just be honest. Is this a need or is it a want? Is it truly a need or is it something that I want? And it's easy to kind of talk yourself into, well, I really need this, and justify the expense. But if you're really honest with yourself, a lot of things that you buy are wants. They're not needs. It's not a necessity. And so that's a first question to ask. The second question to ask is, what will happen if I do not buy this? Okay, if I don't buy this, what's going to happen? And I'll tell you what, that if you buy once, what you're really doing, you're volunteering for a bill. If this is a want and not a need, you're just spending more than you really have to. And you are basically, you're volunteering to spend more money. And so you need to think through and say, what will happen if I don't make this purchase? And if the answer is, if I don't make this purchase, nothing bad really happens and I'm able to save the money, well, then that's probably the wise way to go. Let me give you a third question. The third one is, are there alternatives that are less costly? And so many times you are thinking of needs and priorities and wants, and as you look at those and things are expensive, you need to be able to ask, are there less costly alternatives? Is there a way to get this need met in a way that will cost me less, where I could save money? And that's where really getting value out of your purchases is really going to be helpful. It's really going to serve you in the long run. And then the last question is this: will I derive pleasure out of making this purchase? And you may look at purchases, and some purchases is like, man, I got to pay the water bill. There is no pleasure derived out of paying the water bill, or paying the mortgage, or electricity, or those bills that are truly necessities. But if you're going to make a purchase and it's something that you want to make and that you derive pleasure out of it, well, then that tells you right away, okay, this is a want. It's not a need. And so just be honest with yourself and say, hey, listen, this is a want. It's not a need, and I could do without. And this will free up a lot of stress in your life. It'll free up a lot of room in your budget. If you find that your budget is really tight, if you ask these questions to your purchases or regarding your purchases, then you're probably going to identify, hey, you know what, I need to be looking at some of these things as wants and not needs. And these are areas where I could really scale back and I could cut out of my budget. So you need to prioritize necessities. When you think about strategic spending, prioritize the necessities. Okay, go with what you need, spend on that, prioritize saving, prioritize spending in a way that is going to have a retained value where the money is not just gone. Okay, and you do that by prioritizing your necessities. So let me give you a second kind of key principle when we talk about strategic spending, and that is this: avoid luxury items. You need to avoid luxury items. And we live in a world that really prizes luxury items. People that they want luxury items, whether it's vehicles clothing or jewelry, whether it's they're buying items that are status symbols, but they're luxury items, and they just crush people with debt. They crush people with just the burden and hardship of just having a tight budget. And so when we talk about strategic spending, spend in a way where you're avoiding luxury items. Do everything that you can to stay away from these luxury items. And you might think and say, well, luxury items, like, well, I don't spend money on luxury items. I don't have a Rolex, and I don't have a Corvette, or I don't have, this, that, or the other. Well, maybe you need to rethink some of your purchases. So as we've seen before earlier on in this series, we've talked about a healthy financial position. It requires many things, and we've seen that that's giving to the Lord proportionally and being intentional to give to the Lord, of prioritizing savings. After you give to the Lord and before you start paying bills, give to yourself, pay yourself, set aside money that goes into savings. We talked about living below your means, spending less than you make, talked about creating a budget and living within it and just being consistent with that over time. We've talked about avoiding debt. We've talked about avoiding sinful spending and having an idolatrous attitude towards spending. And then we've talked about avoiding wastefulness. We've talked about saving and investing. I want to give you a last one, and this kind of summarizes the whole lesson today, and that is you need to exercise self-control and delayed gratification. You just need to start putting that into practice, saying, hey, I need to delay this gratification. I need to be able to tell myself no. And so when it comes to items of want, it comes to items that are luxury items, I need to be able to tell myself no. And you need to learn how to get good at identifying what's a luxury item and what is a want, and to say no, and to have self-control and to tell yourself, no, I'm not going to spend this, and I'm going to save. I'm going to be wise about my spending. So, avoiding luxury items is a key mindset to have, besides prioritizing necessity and avoiding luxury items and exercising this delayed gratification and self-control. This is so important. So this is an additional strategy that you need to incorporate into just the way that you normally think, and say, hey, listen, is this a luxury item? Is this a want? And I need to avoid it. And by avoiding those, that allows you to save, and that allows you to prioritize the things that are really important. So many people intentionally or unintentionally put themselves into financial slavery by the pursuit of comfort and luxury type items. And so they do this by buying luxury items that are more than they could afford, and it just puts them into a real tight spot in their budget. And their budget gets so stretched, they get stretched so thin that eventually it breaks. They just can't sustain it. And it's all because they made these luxury purchases. And you think, well, like luxury items, like, what would classify as a luxury item? Well, let me give you a little bit of help here. This comes from the Webster's Online Dictionary. And the definition of luxury is this. There's three key definitions. One is that luxury is a condition of abundance or great ease and comfort. And so ease and comfort are having an abundance. Okay, second definition is something adding to pleasure or comfort, but not absolutely necessary. And third, an indulgence in something that provides pleasure, satisfaction, or ease. And so there's a recurring idea that we see here, and that is that luxury items, they have this idea of ease, comfort, and pleasure. And if you live in America, we enjoy so many luxury items that add to our ease, comfort, and pleasure. I mean, just think about it. Let's say you own your own house and you have a gardener. You pay for a gardener, and that's $25 a week, $100 a month, and you're willing to pay that money because you like the ease of on Saturdays I don't have to go and mow the lawn and get hot and sweaty and dirty. It's like maybe you could afford that, but that is a luxury purchase because you're making a purchase based not on a need, but you're making a comfort purchase. Or I hear people in the summertime and they complain about their electricity bill. They're like, oh man, my electricity bill is $300 a month or $400 a month. And I think $400, that's triple, something like quadruple of what my wife and I spend. And you ask them, it's like, well, how do you spend that much money? And it's like, well, we like to keep the house really cool, keep it at 72, 73 degrees. And it's like, well, they're making a decision. They're giving themselves a bill based on luxury. And maybe they have a health condition. They need it to be that cool, but maybe they don't. And that's just their preference. Well, just in that preference, wanting the ease and the comfort, that falls into the category of a luxury type item. And so you have luxury items that you spend on and you don't even realize that they're luxury items. If I were to ask you, how many luxury items do you purchase every month? You might say, no, I don't purchase any. Well, in reality, you do. And if you think about it and you're able to make a distinction between a want and a need, and purchases that fall under wants, and they're purchased because you want comfort, ease, and pleasure, you just need to be honest and say those are items that are non-essential items, they're non-essential costs. And if you have a hard time making your budget and sticking within your budget, that's the area that you have to look at. You have to look at the luxury items and say, hey, how can I cut back on this area? These are not necessities. And especially if you have debt and you're trying to get out of debt and trying to accelerate that and saying, how do I get out of this? You have to look to those entertainment, luxury, comfort type items and make the cuts. It's going to be painful. It's going to be hard, but you're going to be glad that you did. And it's going to be worth it to you. And so I just want to encourage you with that. So think through and say, what are luxury type items? So let's take a look at a couple categories where luxury items kind of pop up. So luxury items, they pop up in food. And you say, well, this food, everyone's got to eat. Yeah, everyone's got to eat. But, if you could knock back your budget and say, okay, what is the most basic diet that I could have that would save the most amount of money? And you say, well, hey, we're eating a lot of rice, a lot of beans, a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And, we're not going to go with the ice cream. We're not going to go with the candies and the treats. We're not going to go with processed foods and pre-prepared foods, things like that. That it's like those you could identify luxury items, treat type items in your diet. And so, there's a range of stuff. It's, chicken could get the job done, but a lot of times we don't want chicken. I'd say I want a good steak, or hey, I want to have a nice salmon, grill that up on the barbecue or saute it up. But we could look and say, hey, there's always luxury items that we're purchasing. We don't even realize that we're purchasing luxury items. And I'm not saying that luxury items are bad, but don't purchase luxury items if you can't afford it. And if your budget is tight and you're stretched and you're finding it that it's hard to get by, look to these items and say, hey, listen, we're spending a lot of money on food, and it turns out a lot of what we're spending is a lot of treat type items. These are not necessities. These are comfort, pleasure type items, and we could get by without them, and we could save money in the process. So that's my point, that, yeah, you need to avoid luxury items, especially if you are having a hard time staying in budget, and if you're trying to get out of debt, cut those back. Hey, if you could afford it, and buying these kind of treat type items, nice items, and it doesn't put a hurt on your budget, then go for it. But don't give yourself bills that you're going to have a hard time paying. Okay, that's the whole point. So one item or one category of luxury items would be food. Another category would be in your automobile expenses. And so, you think about different automobiles. You could buy a used economy vehicle or a new economy vehicle, or kind of, a mid-size vehicle, new and used, and then you start stepping it up into kind of more specialty vehicles, trucks, and four-wheel drives, and then luxury type of vehicles. And so you may be accustomed to driving nice vehicles. This is the way that your family's always done it. Your parents always had new vehicles, buying vehicles new, and so you just think that's the way to do it. Well, I can just challenge you and encourage you that you could save a lot of money by purchasing good, sound, used vehicles and economy vehicles, vehicles that are going to save you money. If you're having a hard time making ends meet and you're driving a new car, then there's a really easy solution for you. Instead of going with the new vehicle, go with a good used vehicle. Give yourself that breathing room in the budget. And so avoid these items of want. You might be thinking like, I can't drive an older car. People are going to look at me. They're going to make fun of me. My coworkers are going to hassle me. That's okay. Let them hassle you. They're going to hassle you either way. People are going to make jokes and make fun of you either way. But by avoiding unnecessary bills and expenses, if you could buy a used vehicle at the fraction of a cost for your monthly budget, then you could a brand new vehicle. Do that and see how having strategic spending will really be a blessing to you. Let's talk about other items where luxury items sneak in. Talk about housing. Talk about furnishings and decorations, things like that. Things that are accessories to your home where you don't really need it. It's if you don't have that, it's not going to make the house unlivable. But getting the carpets redone and getting new rugs and flooring and accessories on the wall and painting and those types of things that are kind of want items and luxury items. They're there because we want to do something new. We want to make the house look nice, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that adds to your budget and you find it and it's like hard to get by, well, you're giving yourself and you're volunteering for more expense than you really need, and it's an area where you could cut back. Think about housing, think about furniture, expensive furniture, think about electronics and home entertainment type items, audio, video type of stuff, and how much do people spend on home entertainment? A big flat screen TV, or the surround sound speakers, or this, that, or the other, and those are want items or luxury items, and they're not necessities. And so these are areas to cut back and to evaluate as you want to spend and make purchases, to say, is this a luxury item? It is, and I don't really need it. And maybe there's a more affordable alternative that we could make. So I just want to challenge you with that. A couple other items that you could think about: clothing. It's just expensive clothing that would be luxury items, that it's, expensive shoes and fragrances and accessories, hair and makeup type of treatments. These are things that are all voluntary type expenses. They're not necessities. We could add to that entertainment and hobbies. Talk about entertainment, eating out, going to restaurants, movies and entertainment, ball games, and you name it. That these are all voluntary expenses. It's maybe someone from church says, "Hey, listen, we got 4 tickets for you to go see the Dodgers. I can't use these tickets. Here, do you want them? They're free." And you say, "Well, man, Dodgers tickets. We go down on a Saturday, make a day of it. It's great. We got free tickets. What a blessing. And that is a blessing. But by the time you drive down there, you pay for parking, and everyone gets a hot dog and a soda, and you get some popcorn, and you get one of those bobblehead things. All said and done, that might cost you that day $150. And so, yeah, you got the tickets for free, but by accepting those tickets, like, you volunteered for a $150 bill. And so saying, hey, listen, entertainment is not a necessity, and we need to be able to cut back and be smart when it comes to entertainment. Same thing with hobbies. We could add to this category activities. Sport activities. The kids want to sign up for Pony League, baseball, and soccer, or ice skating, and these expenses add up. And sports is great, and great for building character, great for teamwork, it's great for fellowship stuff. But sometimes folks put themselves in greater financial hardship because they have all of these extracurricular activities that all have a price tag with them, and it just adds so much strain to the budget. So I just want you to think through that luxury items is not just a $2,000 suit and a Mercedes-Benz. Or buying a yacht or an airplane, okay? Yeah, those are luxury items, but there's a lot of pedestrian type of luxury items that you commonly buy that you need to be able to identify and say, hey, listen, this is not a need, this is a want. And if I'm having trouble in my budget, and if I can't give to the Lord the way I need to, and if I can't save the way I need to, then these luxury items, I need to be willing to exercise some self-denial and delayed gratification, and to stop making these types of purchases until I get to the point where I could afford it. So those are a couple thoughts to have. Let me just give you some dangers of luxury items. When you think about luxury items, it's not just that, oh, I want it and I bought it, and what's wrong with that? I just want to remind you and help you to see some dangers. And the first danger for luxury items is that they have a high cost. They're expensive. And these expenses, they eat into your budget quickly. That it's like buying luxury type items. How quickly can this turn into an extra $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 in a month? That's a lot of money. And so the danger of luxury items is that they're expensive to begin with. They eat into your budget. So you got to be careful. Second danger is that they're usually high impulse items. Okay, they're impulse buys. That it's like, ooh, I see it and I want it. And so you buy it because you want it, but it ends up costing you more than you bargained for. Third danger is high depreciation. You make the purchase and immediately it does not have the value that you purchased it for. So they're highly depreciable or depreciating. They lose their value quickly. I guess the classic example would be cars. You buy a car and automatically 10, 15%, they lose in value as soon as you drive it off the lot. And so they just lose their value. You'll never be able to sell that car for what you paid for it. And so you need to avoid these highly depreciating items. Just give you a little assignment. This is something fun to do. On a Saturday morning, drive around your town and look for yard sales. And go to those yard sales and look at these items. And as you look at them, I want you to think in your mind, how much did this item cost when it was brand new? And how much is it worth now? It might be a 5-year-old item, might be a 10-year-old item. I remember as a teenager in the early 90s, rollerblading just became very, very popular. And I grew up as a kid, with the roller skates, 4 wheels, and they're real kind of clunky. But then the rollerblades came out, and that was the new thing. And so a pair of rollerblades cost, $80, $90, $100 or more. And then a couple years go by, and you find those same rollerblades at a yard sale for $10. And they're probably hardly used. They're more dusty than they are worn out. But that just goes to show that so many items are highly depreciating. And so you want to just watch out for those depreciating items. And that's one of the danger of luxury items, is that they are just highly depreciating. Okay, let me give you a fourth danger. Fourth danger is that luxury items, they lead to greater spending, because you buy something and it's not necessary, it's a want, and then once you have that, now you need accessories to go along with that. You know, a classic example would be audio video type of stuff. Hey, we just brought a brand new flat screen TV, and now we need the new Blu-ray player. And it's like, oh, you know, the Blu-ray player and the TV, you know, they're all super fancy, and now we could get the surround sound for it. And automatically, you know, you go from one expense of the TV to now you have all these other things that you're tempted to buy, and it just adds to your budget. And so there's a potential to lead to greater spending. So you need to watch out for that. Okay, fifth danger of buying luxury items is that it's a temporary benefit and satisfaction, but it doesn't satisfy. And so you get this kind of like this rush. It's like, oh, this is really good, I enjoy it. But then after a while, there's no satisfaction. And really, this just reveals our tendency towards idolatry, and that you know, we want things, we want to find satisfaction in things, rather than in God. And so we know that ultimately we can only find satisfaction in God and in Christ Jesus. Let me give you a sixth danger of purchasing luxury items, and that is that there's a potential to disrupt your budget. You know, it's a high cost, eats into your budget quickly, and it just throws your whole budget off. And now, rather than living below your means, rather than having extra money left over at the end of the month that you could save, now you're in debt and you can't afford it. And so these luxury items, they just disrupt your budget and make it really hard for you to stay within budget. And ultimately, the danger of luxury items is that it easily leads to debt, and it leads to you being enslaved to your debt. So these are 7 dangers of luxury items. High cost, they're impulse items, they're highly depreciating, it's a potential to lead to greater spending, they just give temporary satisfaction, and then they have a potential to disrupt your budget, and then they have the potential to enslave you in debt. So because of that, you got to avoid these luxury items. And so it's a good idea to review your purchases and to identify, hey, is this a luxury item? Is this a desire, or is it a need? And once these items are identified, and say, you know, maybe it is a want, and it is a luxury item, you need to evaluate, is the cost justified? And is it worth it to spend this extra? And sometimes it may be. But other times you need to say, you know what, the cost is not worth it. For example, you may be in debt and you're trying to get out of debt. And you just need to cut luxury items just drastically to get out of debt, to accelerate your payment of this debt so that you could be debt free. And then maybe you say, hey, listen, we've got out of debt, we've saved up an emergency fund, and it's like, now, hey, we could loosen up the belt a little bit. We spent, a year tightening the belt, getting out of debt. Now we could loosen it up. Let's not go crazy, but we could loosen it up a bit. So you need to review these purchases and really think about them. I really want you to think about how you could be strategic and make purchases that are going to be a blessing to you and not going to be a hardship. So we looked at a couple key points. The first one is that you need to prioritize your needs. Okay, that's the first main point when we talk about strategic spending. The second key idea of strategic spending is avoiding luxury. And then the third one I want to talk about is actually structuring your spending. Okay, think of spending as a strategy. Okay, how do I spend in a way to wring out as much benefit as possible? And so I need to get the most value out of these purchases as I possibly can. And so I want to talk with you about 3 principles of strategic spending. Okay, and the first principle is this: delaying purchases. You need to think of purchases and say, hey, can I delay this? And why would you want to do that? Why would you want to delay a purchase? Well, delaying purchases only works for wants. Okay, delaying purchases doesn't really work for needs, right? So you go to the store and say, hey, we don't have any food in the house, and we're not going to buy any food. Well, that's not a wise decision to make, because you can't really delay something that's a necessity, right? Like you need to buy food, you need to pay your rent, you need to pay your utilities. Okay, so these are purchases that are needs and you can't delay. But when we talk about wants and we talk about luxury items, you could delay those purchases. Okay, it may not be a matter of just saying no. It's like, yeah, we could do this, but let's delay the purchase. And so why would you want to do that? Well, the first reason would be to save some time. Right? You save some time in making this purchase. And so you really think through, is this something that we really want? So many times, you think of, hey, I really want this. And then you buy it and you're like, yeah, man, I should have went another way. And you have buyer's remorse. I love going shopping with my wife because she just illustrates this pretty much every time we go shopping. So we'll be in the store, and we have the cart and going up and down the aisles, and different items get pulled off the shelf and put into the cart, and we walk around some more, and more items go in the cart, and then we start to take a second lap around the store. And I think, hey, we've already gone down this aisle. And so as we're going down those aisles, items go from the cart back onto the shelf. And because my wife has just had time to say, nah, I really don't want that. At first, yeah, I wanted it. But then now, don't really need it. And so delaying a purchase really helps you to think through and say, hey, is this something that I really want to spend the money on? And a lot of times you'll find that if you don't make that impulse purchase, that you'll say, nah, I don't need to make this purchase at all. And so it gives you time to think about the purchase. Okay. It also gives you time to shop for the best value. And so you're able to look around and you're able to kind of get an idea and find prices, and you shop around. And so you don't take the first supposed deal that comes your way, and you're able to find what really is the deal. And so that's another value of delaying a purchase. It just gives you time to shop for a better value. A third reason why delaying purchases is good is that it keeps you from being pressured into a bad purchase. You ever been pressured into a bad purchase where it's you wanted it, you needed it, and you had to have it, and so you bought it, only to find out that a week or two later you get the exact same item at a discount. It's on sale, but because you had to have it right then and there, it cost you more. And so delaying purchases, it gives you time to really think through it, and so you're able to make purchases on your terms. Okay. Another one is that delaying the purchase, it gives you time to save up for the purchase. So you're able to save and you're able to pay that item. You don't have to put it on the credit card. And so you make the item, you make the payment, you take the item, and you don't have to think about anything. Okay. So there's less of a chance for buyer's remorse. So let me give you an example of how you could work out strategic spending and kind of delaying a purchase. Let's say that you walk into the kitchen and the floor is wet. And you're like, where's this water coming from? You go and you find it's coming from the fridge. You open the fridge and the fridge has died. The freezer, everything in it is melting and the water's dripping out. And you think, man, we have to save this food. And so you get out a couple ice chests and put the food in there, and you go down to the local store, you buy ice. And so you need a refrigerator. So you could only live out of ice chests for a couple days. Okay, so this is a bona fide need, right? You really need a refrigerator. And so your first instinct is, okay, well, we go down to Home Depot, we go to Lowe's, go to the big box store, we buy a new fridge. We need it, we got to buy it, they have them, there we go. And so you start thinking, well, hey, we have an emergency fund, and so we could take some money from there, we could put the rest on the credit card, and problem solved, our need is met. Well, that's one way to go, but you've just eaten into your emergency fund, and how long is it going to take for you to replenish that? Let me give you a different way of thinking. So your refrigerator goes out, you need to get a new refrigerator, you need to get one this weekend, and you think ahead and you say, hey, listen, 4 months from now, it's going to be November, Black Friday deals, Christmas deals. I can buy a refrigerator now for $1,000, $1,100, or I could wait for the Black Friday sales and get one for $700. I could save $300, but I can't wait 4 months until this holiday season comes along. Well, this is what you do. You structure the purchase and you say, hey, listen, we need the refrigerator right away. And so you get on the computer, you go to Craigslist, and you look in your city under appliances, and all day long in Craigslist they have good used appliances, refrigerators from between $75 and $150. And you look in there and you find one in your city, and you buy it for $100 cash, you bring it home, you put it in, okay, and now you have your refrigerator. Now you could just keep that, or you could say, hey, listen, we're going to wait 4 months, and when those Black Friday deals come around, then we're going to buy a discount refrigerator, and we've saved $300 or $400. And guess what? That $100 fridge that we got on Craigslist, it hasn't depreciated since we have it. It's already depreciated long before we ever bought it. And so we're going to relist it on Craigslist and sell it for $100. You know what you just did? You have structured your purchase in a way that was good for you and that was a benefit and a blessing to your budget, because you're able to get a good deal on a new refrigerator when the time came, and you're basically able to rent a temporary fridge for nothing. You put down $100 when you bought it, and you sold it at the end of that time for $100, and it cost you nothing. And so you just structured the purchase. And so you saved a big chunk of money on buying a new fridge, and you got by with using a used fridge, and you did that. Good job. You just structured your purchase in a way that was a benefit for you. At the end of those 4 months, you might say, you know what, the $100 fridge is working out really good. Instead of spending that $700 that we've been saving up for the new fridge, maybe we save that, or maybe we're able to put that into something else that is going to be a benefit for us. And so delaying your purchases and structuring your purchases is going to be a real blessing. Okay, so that example, it used some of our questions as far as, is there another low cost alternative? Is there a way that we could structure the purchase to save us money? Is there delayed gratification? Can we avoid depreciation? That example, you used several principles and you came out ahead. And so it's just a new way of thinking. I think most people, they think, hey, we have a need and we just got to do whatever we have to do and spend whatever we have to spend to meet that need. No, think differently about how you could meet that need and you could save money, okay? Because there are ways to do it. Let me give you another one. We talked about delaying purchases, and I want to give you this principle about strategic spending, and that is to avoid depreciation. Okay, so most items will depreciate big time after you purchase them. I've already talked about the car example. That's the classic example, but clothing, furniture, appliances, electronics, music and media, books, tools and equipment, all of these things, they appreciate or they depreciate very, very quickly. And so why not when you make purchases, buy things that are already depreciated. And it'll save you money. And so there's some items that you could do that with and others that you can't, but you'll be amazed that there are a lot of items that you could buy used and it will save you a ton of money. So avoid depreciation whenever you can, and that will be a huge benefit to your budget. Let someone else pay the depreciation, but you could save that money. So I want to encourage you to do that. Let me give you another example of or a principle of strategic spending, and that is to front load the cost. The society that we live in says buy it now, pay for it later. Okay, I want to challenge you to do the opposite. Save now and buy it later, and that will really help you. Okay, it's easy to fall into bad purchases and debt by delaying the burden of the cost. And advertisers, they know this. They say, hey, come in and we'll give you 90 days same as cash, or 12 months same as cash. 0 down payments until May, and then they hit you with that monthly payment. And they have it. It's very sneaky, and the sneakiness, it says, hey, it's like first 3 months same as cash. What they don't tell you is that if you don't pay it off within those first 3 months or whatever the term is, then they're going to charge you all of that interest for the rest of the term. So you're not just being charged the interest for the remaining part of the term, you also pay the interest for those first 6 months or 12 months or whatever the term was. And so rather than buying now and paying later, do the opposite and say, hey, listen, I'm going to save now and I'm going to buy later. And so you structure your purchase saying, no, I'm not going to buy it now. I'm not going to buy it on credit. I'm not going to pay interest and end up paying more. I'm going to save now and I'm going to front load the cost. And I'm just going to buy it outright. And you know what's really great when you buy things outright? Is that you buy it outright and this loads the burden all the way up front, and the transaction is complete. And so there's no more burden, there's no debt, there's no interest, there's no payment, there's no effect on your budget. It's just you own it, and you don't have to think about it anymore. And that's so much better than buying something and then getting that letter 3 months or 6 months down the road saying, hey, listen, you need to start making payments on this. And so you could free yourself of that burden by structuring the debt and saying, I'm going to save up, I'm just going to buy it outright. Everything that I buy, I'm going to buy it outright. Now, there's some things that, it's hard. You're going to buy a house. The average house is what, $250,000, $260,000. Yeah, you're not going to be able to save that much and just buy it outright. And so you need to carry a debt and a mortgage. But most things, just save up and buy it outright, and you'll be glad you did. So let's look at an example of front loading a purchase, right? Of saving now and then buying later. Okay, so the family is in need of a newer car. The current car they have is older, it's having a lot of problems, mechanical problems, it's not passing smog checks, it's just it's kind of turning into a money pit. And so the car, it's still a decent car. It's worth about $4,000. So if they sold it private party, they could get $4,000 for it. And so at this point, they've saved up about $1,300, and they have that money in the bank that's earmarked for a newer vehicle. And so as they look around and they're thinking, man, what do we do? Do we buy private party or do we buy from a dealer? They go to the dealer, and based on their income and their credit score, they qualify for an auto loan, $18,000, $20,000. And they would love to get something that new, something that nice. But they run the numbers and they say, you know what, in order to do that, that would put such a strain on our budget, we could just barely get by, but it would just drain us of all our resources. And so they're thinking of structuring their purchase and making a purchase that's going to be a benefit to them rather than a burden. So they consider buying a good used car, but they don't want to spend that much money, but they also know, hey, like we don't want to have a marginal car that is going to cost us, and we don't want to buy a marginal car that's going to put us in the same situation. And so they decide that it would be wise to buy a good low mileage used car. And so now they're looking for the deal and they're on the prowl. So they begin looking, and as they're looking, they're saving more money each week that goes by and each month that goes by as they anticipate this need. And so they look around, and they just by coincidence talking with their child's teacher, and they find out that her mother's elderly and just lost her ability to drive. She lost her license because of health reasons, and she can't drive. And she's going to be selling her car. And they ask about it. It's a 9-year-old vehicle. It's only got 62,000 miles on it. It's in great shape. And they ask more about it. Well, how much does she want to sell for? She only wants to get about $6,000 for it. And so this is a great deal. Great car, great price. The only problem is they don't have that much money. They haven't saved up enough for this $6,000. And so they go, they see the car, they talk with her, and she's not in a terrible hurry to sell the car. She doesn't really need to. And so they make a deal, and they say, hey, listen, why don't we put down some money towards this purchase? Why don't you give us another couple months to save up and to sell our car? And they do, and they're able to buy the car outright for $6,000. You see what they just did there? They structured their purchase, right? Rather than just rushing into a new purchase, spending more than they have to, saying, hey, we're going to take time. We're going to take time to save. We're going to take time to think through the purchase. We're going to take time to kind of look around, see what our options are, see if we could find a deal. And they do. And I'll tell you guys that there's great deals out there. You just need to take the time and be diligent, look for those deals, and be at the right place at the right time. But if you're patient and if you're willing to have delayed gratification and tell yourself no and structure those purchases, you could really end up ahead of the game. And so I want to encourage you to do that. So let me give you another example. Okay, we've looked at kind of minor expenses, buying a refrigerator. We looked at more intermediate expenses like buying a car. Let me give you a bigger expense, like buying a home. Okay, so we'll take our example family. This family has been diligent in making a budget and sticking to it. They've paid off their credit card debt. They've paid off their auto debt. They're debt-free, and they're renting. And, they're renting a small house, modest house, but their rent is about $1,300 a month. And now that they're debt-free and they're able to save, they're thinking, hey, well, maybe it's time for us to buy a house. We might just be in the position to buy a house. And they're regularly saving about $700 a month. So they're doing good. They're out of debt and they're saving. They're being diligent. So that's about $8,400 a year that they're able to accumulate. And so they meet with the realtor and the real estate, the mortgage broker, and based on their income and their credit score, the realtor says, hey, great news. You qualify for a $270,000 mortgage. And with that, you qualify for a 3% down payment. And it sounds like, wow, 3% of $270,000, that's about $8,100. So with the money that we have right now, we can make that purchase. And so it sounds really good, but they're too wise to go for that. And they think through and they say, hey, wait a second, let's run the numbers in our budget. And this family, they've learned a lot and they know this is too good to be true. And so they run it and they figure out that, yeah, on the purchase price of $270,000, putting 3% down, yeah, they could afford it. They could afford it right now. But the monthly cost of this housing will be about $1,330. And you think, well, they're already paying $1,300 a month for rent, so they're golden. Well, they're smart and they factor in their mortgage insurance, they factor in their property tax, they factor in their property insurance, all this stuff. Now, when they look at the budget, that means that they're going to be paying, probably going to cost them $1,850, $1,900 a month. So this is an extra $500 in their budget, and technically they can afford it because they're able to save $700 a month. But they're too wise to go for this. They say, if we were to make this purchase, we could afford it. We could afford it, but it would make our budget so tight that if anything goes wrong, it'd be putting ourselves in jeopardy. And so they say, is there another alternative to structure this? And they say, how about we, instead of putting 3% down, why don't we wait? Let's save where we could put down 20%. Well, 20% on a $270,000 home is $54,000. And at the rate that they're going to take them 6.5 years to save the money. And if they did that, this would be great. Everything included for their housing would be less than $1,300. It's $1,292. But putting this much down, it would just take so long for them to come up with that 20% down payment. And by that time, who knows if house prices are going up. And they say, no, we're not going to go that way either. Both decisions they've made so far have been wise, okay, because they haven't got hooked into a purchase that they're going to regret. And so they think through ways where they could structure this. But they go to our key questions, and remember, one of those questions is, are there cheaper alternatives? Just because they qualify for a $270,000 purchase doesn't mean they have to spend that much. Their realtor would love for them to spend that much because their realtor works off of commission and a percentage of the sale price. And the mortgage broker, the same thing. And so both of those folks, they would love for this family to spend just at the upper end of their limit. But this family says, you know what, hey, rather than spending that much, why don't we look for a starter home that will be equivalent to, or maybe just a step above where we're living right now, and still modest. And so they say, we could find a good modest starter home in the $180,000 range. And what does that mean? Let's run the numbers. And they say, we could put down 20%, it would only be $36,000. So we could do that in 4 years. In 4 years, we could save that amount. And that would be great, because that would mean that their mortgage would only be about $880 a month. And so by delaying the purchase and by putting more down, they have more room in their monthly budget. But they say, waiting 4 years, that's kind of tough. And they decide, instead of putting all 20% down, why don't we put down 10%? And it'll only take us about 1.5 years to come up with that down payment. We'll still have to pay our PMI mortgage insurance. We'll still have to have those added things. But at this rate, putting 10% down, their mortgage payment will be about $1,159, and by the time they pay their insurance and everything, they're paying roughly equivalent to what they were paying renting their home. And so now they've bought an appreciating asset for around the same price monthly that they were renting, and they're able to still save $700 a month. And so after a few years, they could take that money and they could pay their loan down. And now they pay their loan below the 20% loan to value, and they could reduce their PMI, and they could reduce their monthly mortgage even less. And so that's just an example of structuring, that looking and saying, hey, can we delay the purchase in order to save more, in order to find a better deal? Will that help us? Can we delay the purchase in order to just wait for that better deal? That would be good. Maybe there's a cheaper alternative, and we could look at that. I just want you guys to think and to realize that there are ways to buy your necessities, and even ways to buy things that you want, if you structure purchases in a way that will be a benefit for you. Okay, buying on credit and buying using debt, that's a way that structures the payment and the purchase in a way that benefits the creditors. But you could structure your payments in a way that would benefit you and your family, help keep you on budget. And so I'm hoping that today these were just a couple of examples where it would help you to think through, how can I be wise about making purchases? How can I make purchases that are going to do me good in the long run rather than doing me harm and messing with my budget? And so this is just a different way of thinking. Again, it takes discipline, it takes self-denial, it takes delayed gratification, it takes saying, no, I'm not going to spend on these temporary wants and luxury items, but I'm going to prioritize living below my means, going to prioritize saving, I'm going to prioritize growth. And if you do that, you're not going to regret it. And so I want you to make steps and take steps in a way that is going to have long-term benefit to your financial well-being. And so this is a way to do that, by strategic spending. So hopefully this is a benefit to you. Hopefully this opened up your eyes to some ways that you can really make the most out of your purchases, and you could make purchases that will be a benefit to you. And so look forward to next time, and God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.